Should you buy the M1 MacBook Air from 2020 in 2025? Let's find out. Well, the answer is yes, but there is one important factor to consider in your decision, and we will go over that later. Now, instead of going into the things that might typically be in your regular reviews, I'm just going to pick 3 main points that really stand out for me and I believe will stand out for others and help you understand why maybe this is the right choice for you. So the first thing is the design, and more specifically the thin and sleek design that this MacBook Air had. It reminds me quite honestly of the first commercial of the original MacBook Air, how it just came right out of that envelope. And that marketing is to some extent true with this laptop, because when I'm carrying around my new MacBook Pro, I do feel it in my bag and I know that I'm carrying a laptop. But with this MacBook Air, honestly, I miss it in the sense that in my backpack, it was always so light, I didn't really think about it, and I thought of it more as just carrying around a notebook. So that is a major factor, especially for students and people who are always on the go. And moving on to point number 2, all of this is even more impressive simply because of the processor that this laptop has, the M1 chip. Now, despite it being the first generation of Apple's new M series, it was amazing, and it still is. For example, if we compare it to the MacBook Airs right before this from the Intel generation of chips, the difference is staggering, and I would now no longer recommend an Intel chip at all. For example, even if we go back and look at the Pro level computers from the year before, here's the difference. It's amazing. It edits 4K no problem, and it will continue to get software updates for years to come, whereas the Intel chips have already been phased out. And thirdly, well, it's a bit more of an overarching point, but it's the lack of problems that this laptop has. It has no butterfly switches, which were very problematic in the previous MacBooks. It has an amazing trackpad, especially in comparison to a lot of Windows devices. The screen is amazing for the price and there are no complaints there. And the only real downside is the webcam that is 720p. But even that is very much something you can overlook because it is usable, and typically webcams across most laptops are not that amazing anyway. Now for that issue that I mentioned at the start. The base RAM configuration of 8GB is just not enough. Even if you might think it is enough, unless you are genuinely using it like a Chromebook and maybe just using Google Docs and keeping 10 tabs open at once, you really do want to upgrade to the 16GB model, especially with the new OSs and also with new programs, especially AI related things requiring more RAM. Even if you just want to do some editing or you want to have quite a lot of tabs open, 8GB is not enough. So I would highly recommend that if you are going to buy this laptop, make sure to get the 16GB variant. So you might be looking around and looking at different videos of this and a bit unsure whether or not this is good for things like video editing or photo editing or doing any other productivity tasks. And the answer is yes, especially if you are just starting out on YouTube, for example. It's a great option to edit your first videos, even in 4K if you are using Final Cut Pro or DaVinci. And how much are you going to spend to get a laptop like this? Well, on eBay, you're looking at the £300 to £400 range for a good model that has 16GB of RAM and usually comes also with the 512GB of storage, which is of course useful, but 256 is just fine, especially if you're using an external drive, which is much cheaper than upgrading storage typically. Now, if you have a higher budget to spend, you could definitely look at the M4 MacBook Airs. Please let me know if you'd like me to do a video talking about them, and I can go into further depth, but they are great machines, obviously more powerful, but of course, with that comes the price tag. So for £300 to £400, these are amazing laptops, and most of the depreciation has already happened on the price, so you are likely to be able to resell it on once you are done with it in a couple of years, for example. So overall, it is great because it's a cheap-ish laptop for what it is. You can buy it secondhand or even on refurbished on Amazon, for example, and you don't really need to worry about keeping it in amazing condition either too much. You can just throw it in your bag, use it, knowing that it's actually a pretty good powerhouse and also has amazing battery life. As a side point, very important to note, the battery life is amazing on this laptop and it will handle most of what you throw at it just fine. The only thing to keep in mind is that the software updates will probably stop around 2027, but it is uncertain. With Apple, there is never an official date, but things are usually typically around 7 years from release. Now, knowing this is a M processor, my bet is that it will probably go a bit longer, but you never know. But of course, once it stops getting the major updates, you should have security updates for a while and it won't really be a problem. So that's my video on the M1 MacBook Air in 2025. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them below and I will see you next time.